Okay, hello everyone. My name is Luna Sorrenti. I am Operations Assistant with Sebastopol Center for the Arts. We are really excited today for Linda Loveland Reid's lecture on Judy Chicago. Just a little bit about Linda is that she has 2 novels available on Amazon right now. Her short stories, essays, and poetry have appeared in over 30 various publications. She teaches art history for SSU and Dominican universities in the Osher Lifelong Learning Program. Linda serves on SSU's OLLI Advisory Board and Curriculum Committee and is chair of the art club with over 200 members. She is a board director for the Sebastopol Center for the Arts, and some of her other interests include directing theater for over 30 years, figurative and abstract painting, and directing community theater. Linda was chair of the Apple Blossom Festival Art Show with over 150 artworks on display by artists county-wide, and her motto is live till you tilt. All right, everybody. So I'm going to let Linda take it away from here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Luna, very much. And I really appreciate your being here. And I'm also sorry we had to switch things around at the last minute. I think it really kind of threw everybody off. So we have a small group today, but small groups are okay too. So I'm going to go and share screen right now and see if we can get this up. How's that? Does that look good, Luna?
Yes, all good.
Okay, great. Okay, so I'm gonna get my little screen on here, speaker. Okay. Welcome everybody to this lecture on Judy Chicago. So this is an artist that you want to know about. She's an artist, an educator, an author, a feminist pioneer. Judy has always been about NOW now. And yet Judy Chicago is alive. She is not a dead artist. And she began working in the 70s, but she has kept very current. In 2018, Time magazine named her 100 of the most influential people. And maybe some of you saw the Judy Chicago exhibit that was at the De Young. Maybe it was that last year. Time flies. Well, in 1970s, I was busy raising 3 children, and that's my excuse for not being on the front lines of the feminist movement like Judy was. And some people have said when I give this lecture that I'm too enthusiastic, I'm too pro-feminist. Well, it isn't that, although I am, and I'm proud to be, and for women in all kinds of ways. But I believe in the things that Judy Chicago believes in and has supported through her life. And we all owe her, women, I think, a debt of gratitude for what she's been willing to do. So we begin in the 1970s. Social change, of course, was thundering through the air. Judy Chicago's goal was to combat the suppression of women's creativity. She fought for women's work to be recognized, to be shown, and to be honored. And her first huge act was to remodel an entire mansion, which we'll look at. And from there, of course, she designed her famous dinner party, which you may have heard about. Maybe some of you have even seen it. And if you have, I would love to hear from you later. Her career spans 5 decades. Many people think that Judy Chicago is gay, but she's not. She's been married twice, and their second husband she's still married to after a very long, wonderful relationship. Judy Chicago was born in July 20th, 1939, and her name was not Judy Chicago. It was Judith Sylvius Cohen. And she really began to draw at a very young age. And then later she attended the Chicago Art Institute, which is a very important institution. So she was raised in Chicago, but she did move to Los Angeles in the 50s. And then she attended UCLA, and she received her BA and her MA in painting and in sculpture. She is a prolific lecturer and a writer, and she taught taught art at Duke, Indiana universities, and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, and she has numerous awards, way too many to even list. So her parents were Arthur and May Cohen. This was a left-wing Cohen family of Jewish intellectuals. And her father was Arthur Cohen, and he was in a line of 23 generations of rabbis, but he broke that tradition. He became a labor organizer, an active member of the American Communist Party. Her mother was May Cohen, and she was a former dancer and a medical secretary, and she did instill the love of art in her children. So the father's liberal views towards women and supporters and his support of workers' rights did influence Judy's beliefs. And in 1950s and the 60s were very tough for Judy, in that during the McCarthyism era, her father was investigated. And it really did create quite a bit of turmoil for the family. Judy was only 6 and she was home. Her mother was visiting the apartment right next door, but the FBI came and started asking her questions. And of course, her mother returned, but it was a scary time. Her father died in 1953 from peritonitis, and the mother would not discuss the death, anything about it, or allow the children to attend the funeral. And so Judy did not come to terms with his death until the 1960s, when she was hospitalized for a month with a bleeding ulcer, and it was attributed to unresolved grief. Well, she meets Jerry Garowitz, and they get married, and 2 years later, he is killed in an accident. Tragically, he dies in a car crash, and Judy suffered an identity crisis for several years. It was just all too much. This is one of Judy Chicago's earlier pieces. She did this in 1964, and she has said that her work is strongest when it's a fusion between painting and sculpture, which is what this is. So this is a 20-inch acrylic painting on clay piece, and it represents the female and the male genital forms, so the phallic and the vaginal. And this really was not comfortable for many in the art world, especially the males who ran the art world at the time. But she was always defiant. She refused to show her work in a California Women in Art show, which she was asked to, but she said, no, I won't show in any group defined as women, Jewish, or California. Someday, when we all grow up, there will be no labels. Well, what you're looking at here, excuse me, I'm going to get a little sip of water. Thank you very much. I having a little bit of allergy reaction today. So what you're looking at here, this is a full page ad taken out in Art Forum. And those of you who read art magazines know that this is, even today, an important magazine. And so how does she become Judy Chicago? Well, her name, of course, was first Judy Cohen, and then it was Garowitz. And a gallery owner started calling her Chicago because of her strong New York accent. You can just hear it. Hey, Chicago. So Judy was appalled by the male dominance in the art schools. And so and it is true. This does go on in art schools, and it still goes on in art schools. I think it's a lot better, but I know when I was even back in the 90s taking my BAs in university, there was this feeling, you could feel it, and that it's a very strong male presence. Well, back in the 60s, you can just imagine how strong that was. So she rebelled, and in 1970, she liberated herself, and she changed her name to Judy Chicago, and she took this ad, and it says, Judy Garowitz hereby divests herself of all names imposed upon her through male social dominance and freely chooses her own name, Judy Chicago. So there you are. Now, here's another ad to promote her show. She had a show at Cal State. And so she sits here. You see her in a male stance, in a male sport. Her satin shorts and her sweatshirt are printed with her name. Her gloved hands on each knee, and she looks ready to take a swing. So why was she so upset? Well, she'd been told that she couldn't be an artist and a woman too. And her ad pokes fun at the male artists operating one of the first modern art galleries in LA. It was called the Ferris Gallery. Maybe some of you know about this gallery. And it was run, of course, by males and basically for males. So they're churning out these really important male artists that have become really household words in art, you know, Robert Irvine, Ken Price, Ed Keenholz, and so on. So she resented not being able to be a part of that. Well, of course, feminism was really on the rise. Probably some of you remember and read Betty Friedan, The Feminine Mystique, and Germaine Greer, The Female Eunuch, and Marilyn French, The Woman's Room. I certainly remember those books. So this is a photo of Gloria Steinem and Angela Davis. Now, Steinem's attitudes about feminism were influenced by the appalling treatment that her mother received in and out of mental hospitals. And of course, Steinem, she's very pretty. She was a Playboy bunny. And so, you know, and she was very intelligent. So she was of definite interest, and she became an icon for the women's movement. And of course, Angela Davis, she's a scholar and an attorney and an activist for civil rights. You might remember, I certainly do, that she caused a huge conflict when she was refused the lectern at University of Davis back in, was that the 70s or maybe the early 80s, and so bringing charges of violation of free speech at that time. So that was a big controversy. Well, what was the first wave of feminist movement? Well, we all know that was the suffragettes. So back in 1948 at Seneca Falls Convention, Seneca Falls is a very famous convention. It was the first women's rights gathering, and they passed a resolution in favor of women's suffrage. And 21 years later, in 1869, the National Women's Suffrage Association was founded with Elizabeth Cady Stanton as president. And then it wasn't until 1919, in the 19th Amendment was passed to give the women the vote. Hey, it only took us 70 years. And of course, the second wave of feminism or feminist movement was in the 1960s. And Judy had felt rejected. She said, quote, "I am aggressive, I'm outspoken. As an artist, my subject matter has been considered non-essential. I want to affirm the female experience, to tell women that their point of view is vital and all important." Well, this is a very famous poster of the 70s. The gorilla mask on a naked girl. Well, you might ask, what's going on? So these is a group of female artists, and they're called Gorilla Girls. And they don these masks. They don't get naked, but they do don these masks, and they go into, and they're anonymous, by the way, and they go into galleries and museums and they just storm them and they're demanding a fair shake. So in the 1970s, less than 5% of the artists in the modern art section in the Met are women, but 85% of the nudes were female. And of course, there was just this very small percentage, there was 52% of the population were women, and 70% of the art students were women, and 5% of the gallery works in galleries were by women. And so this was something that they really wanted to change. And, the more women artists are recognized today, that's for sure. But there was a question, a very famous question asked, and it was asked by a woman who wrote a book, and she said, why don't we have any women Van Goghs or Picassos? And I mean, we can answer that to a certain degree. We know that women from the very start didn't get to do what the men got to do. You had a Mary Cassatt who did these wonderful paintings of children and of women at the opera and things like that, but that's all she could paint. I mean, if she tried to go somewhere and paint something more aggressive, then nobody would buy her work and she would be thought to be really out of line. And of course, women really couldn't go to art school initially. And when they did, eventually they couldn't, work from the nude figure, all kinds of things. And then we have the traditional problems with women that we know that they are the nurturers. They are the ones that have to run the family and take care of the family and so on. So there's a lot of reasons. Now, so I'm sorry, see. And so Judy Chicago, she's in LA and she's working with these artists, and it's a time when minimalism and is a very popular form of art. And she's trying to do, she's trying to be get noticed, and she's of course affected by what's around her, and she's doing some minimalism work herself. But it really kind of takes its own feel from her. Even so, this rainbow picket she does, and she's basically fighting for space among men. And this is what would call a sculptural installation. And she has a show that she does in LA, so she's getting some traction. This is canvas stretched on plywood. And it's named the Rainbow Picket. It's named after a 1960s soul singer named Wilson Pickett. Now, Clement Greenberg, very important critic at the time, said of this show that the best work in the show was done by Judy Chicago. So what Judy says about this piece, what is this about? She said, I felt forced to deny parts of myself as I couldn't seem to fit into the existing male structure. It's no accident that it was during this whole period when I was least overt about my womanliness. So it was a period in LA when no women artists were taken very seriously. So she's struggling with all of that. This is called Domes. She does it in 1969. Again, it's minimalism. So it's composed of 3 dome-like forms and uses transparent material with spray-on plastic. And so she's these repeated shapes, and also the glossiness. It sort of takes after the famous minimalist Donald Judd, if you know some of his work. But its deployment is softer, it's more feminine, its rounded forms have this sort of ambiguous femininity to it. And some feel that these pieces prefigure the purely feminist ideas that were to come later. So these 3 domes make up what come to be Chicago's signature stylistic motif, and that is of the triangle, which is closely associated with the vaginal imagery in Chicago's oeuvre. Now, this is called Lifesavers, and each one of these paintings, there's two paintings here, are acrylic lacquer and 60 by 60 inches. She works very large. And of course, that was something that the artists of the 60s were doing. They started working in these mammoth sizes. So Chicago says, quote, I discovered that I was multi-orgasmic and that I could act aggressively on my own sexual needs. I called these lifesavers because in a way they did save my life by confronting head on that issue of what it was to be a woman. These forms are rounded like domes or breasts or bellies and open up like donuts. And then the donuts begin to be grasping and assertive. So all of these, she says, I was developing color systems which made forms turn and dissolve and open and close and vibrate. All of these sensations were emotional and body sensations translated into form and color. Well, I said she liked to work large, and she was right in there for sure with the guys in working in a large size, and also very dramatic. But she does it all from the huge to the small and the intimate. So she isn't just doing large. Here's another piece that I wanted to show you installed, because this is called Sunset Squares. So she has these massive squares. That's also her mural on the back wall. And so she was making her mark, and was tough as it was, and the only female practically that was being recognized at the time. But still, as she said, she really wasn't finding herself. She was doing what was being done. It had some feminine feel to it, but it wasn't, didn't feel she was able to strike out the way she really wanted to. Well, she begins to move in this direction of her gender. So what is this? What do you think this is? I'll give you a hint. It's part of a car. Okay, it's the hood of a car. So you maybe can figure out by now why Judy Chicago might paint the hood of a car, especially that this is a male focused item that she has feminized, capturing it into her own tent, if you will. The design, what this design is, the female uterus with the baby inside in abstract. And they are beautiful, and she did a lot of these pieces. So here's what she says, quote, when I first started my professional life in 1963, I went to auto body school because I wanted to learn to spray paint. It seemed another way to prove my seriousness to the male art world. I put my very sexually feminine images on this car hood, which in itself is quite a symbol. I retreated from, but she said, I retreated from that kind of subject matter because it was met with such great ridicule from my male professors. Then, she said much later, I slowly began to move in the direction that she wanted to. So you can see that she struggled. She struggled all those years. Now, this is 1970, and when she did finally move into her own, she did it with a vengeance. So she is now recognized as a first generation feminist artist. And here she is with Judy is on the left with fellow artist Miriam Shapiro. Now, what they saw in school, they were in Cal State Fresno, was a lack of history about women artists, about women at all. And Judy began the first feminist art program in the United States at the California State University, Fresno, 1970. And later, she and Shapiro started the feminist art program at Cal Institute of Arts, Cal Arts. Now that's a very important art institute. So her classes discussed female issues that were not on the curriculum: birthing, birth control, menstruation. So these definitely were things that were not being discussed in school. So the first project that they do is called Woman House. It's a very famous project. They do it at Cal Arts, and what they do is they take this abandoned 17-room mansion, which was in Hollywood, and what they do is they do the renovation themselves. So there was no heating, there was no plumbing. They cleaned, they painted, they sanded floors, they replaced windows, they installed lights, and they remodeled every room. Now, it opened in 1972 to the public, and the first 2 days only women were allowed in, and there were 10,000 visitors. So here's some of the artists that collaborated on the Woman House project. This collaboration with other people is something that Judy Chicago will continue to do throughout her life. So there were 21 students from Cal Arts in LA that worked on this, and it was the first feminist project to receive national attention. It was reviewed in Time magazine, etc. And there is a film. It's a 47-minute documentary. It's called Woman House is Not a Home. And I suggest that you look it up and that you watch it, because it's really fascinating. Well, here's one of the rooms. So they transformed each room into an environment that spoke to female oppression in society. The rooms are designed so that women's social roles could be exposed, exaggerated. Here we have a kitchen with breasts. So the eggs are on the ceiling, and as the eggs come down the walls, they turn into breasts. So familiar objects have shaped women's identities. Kitchens and all that it is shape their behavior and attitudes. Now, why? Well, to be a catalyst for change. That's why they did this, to liberate women from the social labels and negative attitudes about the female body. This is another room. This is called the lipstick bathroom. So they used icons such as lingerie, dollhouses, clothing, and makeup to criticize society. The bathroom is a ruby red lipstick color, but it looks gory. It's also referred as the menstruation bathroom. Feminism was one of the forces that threw modernism into crisis. We know that. We all went through that. Do you remember? How did you feel? Were you involved? What was happening to women? What was happening to men? This is another one of the rooms. This might be my favorite because I just love it. It's the linen closet. And here we have a woman sandwiched into the closet. She's trapped. Is she trapped on a shelf? Is she between the sheets? An old age female activity of homemaking taken to fantasy proportions. Now, the critics said favorably, these rooms represent a repository of dreams where women wash, bake, cook, sew, clean, and iron their lives away. Well, there was some tough stuff that was being done in the name of women liberation during this period of time. And they were trying to expose historical misogyny and pornography and so on. And Carol Lee Schienemann, this is an artist, and she did this a performance piece. It's in 1975. So she puts a rolled up scroll from in her vagina, and then she reads. She takes it out, and she reads out loud from Cezanne, "She was a great painter," to an astonished audience. So you can just imagine how shocking this was. Much analysis of this piece, of course, has been written, as it has been about Women House, as it has been about all these pieces that we're looking at. So I guess some of this confused me. It seemed against women, and yet we have the play called Vagina Monologues. I'm sure many of you have seen it, in which the word vagina is taken back. And to do that is spoken out loud, I think, over 1,000 times in the play. So these were methods that these women were using to turn the face and open up and see what was being done and said about women in secret or in quieter places. This is called Ablutions, 1972, and it involved some heavy protest art. So Judy and 3 other women put this together, and it's based on court cases on rape, the way women were treated who actually spoke up. And feminist artists came to agree that more explicit statements should be made by performance art pieces to exploit what was happening with women. So to encourage survivors to speak out, basically. And the project was a collaboration between 4 artists, the teacher and students, and the audience. So what happens is the audience enters the art studio. This is done at school. They enter the art studio to see 3 body-sized galvanized tubs on the concrete floor, filled with different substances: eggs, blood, clay. Around the tubs are strewn broken eggshells, piles of rope and chain, and animal kidneys. The soundtrack recording of women talking about their rape played continuously, telling intimate, explicit details, information not part of public culture at the time. A nude woman was slowly bound from feet to scalp with gauze and bandages, and each woman emerged from the final tub caked with clay, cracked to reveal rivulets of blood. She was wrapped like a corpse in a sheet. Throughout the performance, 50 beef kidneys were nailed to the wall, encasing the room like a spinal column surrounded by its organs. So this is some of the things that were going on at this period of time. And I must say that when I came upon some of these things like this, I didn't always understand. Sometimes I felt it was too much, or why did we have to do that? But and maybe that's debatable today. But I think probably this really helped to, these kinds of things really help to unfold and unbury a lot of things. Okay, so her next project is much calmer than the one we just looked at, and it went to the public. And this is called The Dinner Party. So Judy herself, she went to a dinner party and she noticed something. She said, quote, "The men at the table were all professors and the women all had doctorates, but weren't professors. The women had all the talent and they sat there silent while the men held forth. I started thinking that women have never had a Last Supper, but they have had dinner parties." And so she does the dinner party, and it's called The Dinner Party, a Symbol of Our Heritage. She works on this piece from 1974 to 1979, and it's permanently installed now at the Elizabeth A. Sackler Center for Feminist Art at the Brooklyn Museum. So The Dinner Party, Chicago wanted to highlight the ideas that women are often overlooked or dismissed. Notably, some art critics labeled it vaginas on plates, which we will see in a moment, but it captivated the public, and many found meaning and validation in observing it. So The Dinner Party is homage to 1,038 women They aren't not just artists. These are women that are artists, but they're also women of history. And it's been seen over a million time by a million people. There's books, there's articles, there's, this is a very, very famous piece. You can see it's triangular in shape. We know that the triangle, what that triangle means to Judy. It also it means equality. It's 30 by 48 feet. And there were hundreds of volunteers who worked on this. So the table is set for 39 women, and 990 other women's names are listed on the white floor on the inside of the triangle. So the dinner party has places for women whose position in history is fairly well assured, such as Boudica, how do you say that? Boudica of England, the warrior queen, Queen Elizabeth I, Virginia Woolf, George O'Keeffe, but there's also more obscure figures, such as the ancient Greek mathematician, Hypatia, and the 20th century birth control advocate Margaret Sanger, and the mythical women and female gods such as Kali and Ishtar. So there are 3 wings. So you can see there are 3 sides to this, and the place setting that each of the place settings on each of the sides has 13, and so we will look here. So this is the second wing, and it denotes the rise of Christianity, and it includes Eleanor of Aquitaine, Hildegard of Bingen, Queen Elizabeth I, Artemisia Gentileschi, Anna van Sherman. And here's Anna van Sherman. This is hers up close. So Anna van Sherman, she championed women's education, and she received a classical education from her father in the 1600s. And she was considered a child prodigy. She could freely read and translate both Latin and Greek by the age of 7. And at age 11 had learned German, French, Hebrew, English, Spanish, and Italian. She deserves a plate, don't you think? So the third wing represents the age of revolution. And again, there's 13 altogether, including Anne Hutchinson, Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, Emily Dickinson, Margaret Sanger, Virginia Woolf, and Georgia O'Keeffe. Now, I don't think I said this yet, maybe I did, but each one of the plates are a vagina. And so Judy Chicago designed each one of these to honor the person that it was made, but the designs are all vaginas. So here we are looking at the one for Virginia Woolf. So they're intentionally using crafts not honored by the male-driven art world: needlework, sewing, ceramics. So here we're looking at Virginia Woolf as one of the most innovative writers of the 20th century, and she's best known for a stream of consciousness prose style. So let's look to see how they constructed hers and why. Number 1, you see the seeds in the center, and they refer to the creative fecundity. And the center kind of bursts out from the petals, referencing a woman who urged other women to break free from the confines of predominantly masculine literature to write in a style reflective of themselves. A stitched and painted light beam glows from beneath the plate. This is hard for you to see. And it's reference to the book To the Lighthouse, symbolizing the radiance of her illuminated a path toward a new women-formed literary language. And the delicate chiffon fabric of the runner can be interpreted as a reference to Woolf's legendary mental fragility, her death by drowning, suggested by the wave patterned, embroidered around the illuminated letter V in her name, a motif which also referenced her book, The Wave. So you can see how there's really a lot of thought in every single part of these designs. This is one of my favorite. It's Emily Dickinson's plate. It's frilly, it's porcelain. I mean, it just has these little tiny eyelets. There's a documentary, by the way, on the making of this plate, which I encourage you to go and look at because it's just fascinating. Here they are making the Emily Dickinson plate. And as I said, they worked on this for 5 years. And she had all these various artisans, and they would make these plates to her designs. There were 400 artists in all that worked on this with great skill. So here's the Emily Dickinson plate when it's finished. And just the ensemble itself has cotton, linen, fabric, woven interface, support material, horsehair, wool, and cotton twill, tape, silk, synthetic gold cord, silk fabric, cotton net, lace, and applique needlework, which is mid-19th century collar lace, silk ribbon, coffee dye, tea dye, and thread. So, I mean, this is really thought out, detailed, and loving involvement in each one of these designs. This is Georgia O'Keeffe's. It was the last place setting at the dinner party. Her plate has the most height and signifying her artistic liberation and her success as a female artist. The imagery on O'Keeffe's plate incorporates the forms that she used in her own flower paintings, such as Black Iris. Well, the first exhibition was in 1979 at San Francisco MoMA. Now, how did the critics like this? Well, they didn't. It was annihilated, basically. They said that it focused on vaginal imagery and the use of craft, neither of which they felt what belonged in the art world. And why use the vagina? Why do we have the play, Vagina Monologues? So this is hotly discussed. So sexual words used by male gender against women to declare females not fit to serve in certain areas due to hysterics and all of that. So it was shunned by the art world, basically. And in 2007, it was installed, as I said, permanently in Brooklyn. But this is back in 1979. And it was basically, for a long time, not thought to be appropriate. And of course, now it's traveled all over the world. So the dinner party had an effect on Judy Chicago's career in that it eclipsed everything else that she's done up to today. She did have a retrospective at the de Youngs. Maybe some of you saw that. It was fabulous. And she is really finally getting the recognition that she deserved. In fact, in the they did not focus on the dinner party at the de Young exhibit, and they did her work not in chronological order. And she said, "Oh my gosh, it was such a huge sigh of relief," is what she felt, because again, it was going to be, you know, all about the dinner party and not about the rest of her work. And she has extensive other work. So today, Judy says there is meaningless art. So much of the art is meaningless, and it's driven by big money. Well, let's look at another one of her projects, very important projects in 1985, called the Birth Project. There's 80 works involved. These are many of them woven and embroidered. She believes the miracle of life is God, that it deserves to be celebrated in awe and respect. She fights spiritual traditions that accept the concept that the male is king. Judy said, not a white guy, not the lie that a white God made man and took dominion of the world over women. So here she is. This is a photo, and this is how she puts all her projects together. She flies the different parts of the country. She meets with artisans, and they talk about design and so on. And these are going to be the people who, a lot of them, who do the work. So here she is. She's in Texas this time, and she's talking to them about the birth project. And under her supervision, 150 needle workers do the work in their homes. And she works on this project in 1980, 1985. And Chicago designed the images to be constructed by these needle workers. Some of them, were in Canada, some in New Zealand, and in the United States. And she sent out questionnaires asking women about their experience with birth. And she created designs based on their responses. And the Birth Project documentary, it tours internationally now as part of curriculum for some universities. Here's one of the pieces. Some of the images are very dramatic and always beautiful. This piece, a woman's body forms a yellow butterfly silhouette, which is a symbol of metamorphosis. Images of birthing had nearly disappeared in the Western world. And the Birth Project virtually reversed that history. Judy said, quote, if men had babies, there would be thousands of images of crowning. Here's another one. This is a very powerful image. So it's a drawing on fabric, and it's titled Tear and Tear. So there's two meanings to this word. A tear seeps from the right eye of the figure. It's hard to see in this image, but there's a tear that seeps from the right eye of the figure as she strains to give birth while nurturing her other children. If you can see the other children who cling to grab for her. And so the first tear refers to the conflict women can feel about the decision to become parents or the pain that they have in childbirth. The second one is tear, refers to the surgical tears that occur during childbirth. But here we have this woman's legs being held apart by her hands, and then these other children here. It's a very, very powerful piece. So as I said, Judy Chicago is married to Donald Woodman. They got married in 1985 and they're married today. And he is a photographer. They have collaborated on work together. Now the hotel that you see behind them is in Hotel Belen, New Mexico, and it is their home. And it has become an art mecca. So Hotel Belen, New Mexico. And they turned it, of course, into their home, into a studio and into a gallery. And many art aficionados come and visit. And I wanted to show you too, here is one of Donald Woodman's photographs. Isn't it beautiful? It was inspired by Georgia O'Keeffe's cloud painting. Well, we can certainly see that. Now, Judy says, if you can look at all these plants, she says they both have black thumbs, and it's a wonder any plant lives. This is another one of Donald Woodman's works. He works in series. Of course, Judy works in series as well. So he might do a series. This one is called Selling America, in which he'll have all these photographs in the series. He works on very many different varied subjects, but you can just see in this photo. I mean, you could talk about this photo for a long time. You have housing development behind it. You have this batch of cactus here, and then you have a street light. There's lots to talk about in this photo. That blue sky, just fabulous. Here's another one of his. Again, you could just talk about this photo all day long. It says, no hunting, no hunting, no trespassing private property. Just a stunning picture though, isn't it? I mean, you can just see the little individual pieces of wheat, and there's the rolling hills in the background, and it's just a stunning picture. He just one more of his, because he works on these really different subjects. From 1977 to 1984, he does this project in that he works on Agnes Martin. And Agnes Martin, if you know her work, now it's really, really hard to see. I know you have to really look hard, but this, where my cursor is right now, that's a painting by Agnes Martin, and that's the way she paints. It's minimalism, and it's very, very faint, but there are different colored lines going across here. And she was a very different, really interesting person. He does a manuscript, puts together a manuscript. It's a book. You can actually buy it. It has her paintings in it. And it's brutally frank. He reveals the side of Agnes Martin known only to, until this for a few. She had a long struggle with mental illness, and she had a heroic battle to keep her incessant inner voices. Okay, she was schizophrenic, to keep her incessant inner voices in check in order for her to realize her vision as one of only a handful of women who were to emerge in the male climate of abstract expressionism and minimalism. And so this was one of Donald Woodman's projects, and Agnes Martin and her work is very fascinating. Okay, so together, as the collaboration between her husband, Woodman, and herself, they worked from 1985 to 1993 on the Holocaust Project, From Darkness into Light. They created a 3,000 square foot traveling exhibition. Travels to many museums. What caused her to do this is she said she had a growing interest in her Jewish heritage, and it led her to this project. There are many sides to the Holocaust Project, and it has a lot of research involved in it, as well as art pieces. And in 1985, they began for 8 years. Of course, they researched, they traveled, they studied to put this together. And Judy Chicago, says, what can this teach us about our lives today? That was something she wanted to ask. Here's another piece of it, of the Holocaust Project. And it's structured as a journey into the darkness of the Holocaust and out into the light of hope. It's based on the journey, the intellectual, physical, and emotional that Donald and Judy took. The exhibition and the book are structured around her belief that confronting and trying to understand the Holocaust, as painful as that might be, can lead to a greatly expanded understanding of the world in which we live. She said, our hope is that this will contribute to a firm individual and collective commitment to take up the vast project of transforming ourselves and nurturing our humanity, thereby creating a more peaceful and equitable world. So it's a huge project. There's many elements, and it was done when there was actually a very strong opinion about who should produce Holocaust art. if you were not directly affected by the Holocaust, there were many in the Jewish community who felt that it was not right for you to produce this artwork. But Judy did it anyway. And her project suggests that the Holocaust came out from the fall of man, if you want to go back to the Garden of Eden idea, man's fall from grace, which was controversial and did upset some people. But Judy's quote is, "Reality is a tissue of lies." This is another part of the Holocaust. There's a real history lesson in all of it. It's to be analyzed, and it has been. It is often documentary in its nature, and like we see here on these walls. And it's really to be studied, and obviously much has been written about this. Here's a piece that she did. It's called 4 Questions. And maybe you remember seeing this if you went down to see her retrospective at the De Young. Maybe you remember this piece, because when you looked at it head on, this is what you saw. You couldn't make out what it was. But if you just looked at a different perspective, then you could see it. And that's part of what she was saying here. Just look with different perspectives. So if you walk to the right of the picture, it becomes clear. It's a puzzle to match the puzzling questions. So the 4 questions deposits us into the midst of profound moral quandaries and ambiguities, and it challenges us to find our way out. So in the emerging 21st century, urgent concerns have risen regarding the relationship of scientific and medical technologies to the moral and ethical dimensions of life. Should a human being be cloned? Stem cells, as example. There are questions. Chicago and Woodman attempt to awaken our capacity for reflection, for empathy. The questions are simple and are posed to an audience. So here's a panel from the 4 questions that depicts sterilization and asks, who controls our human destiny? In this piece, the artist refers to Hitler's sterilization program of racially impure women, linking it to questions surrounding motherhood. You can see that her subjects are not easy. So this is another in the 4 questions. So Judy fiercely works on really hard subjects. And why? Well, it does not make you a popular artist to constantly bring up nasty subjects, but they're important subjects, and that's why. Chicago was prescient not only about feminism, but also about understanding sexual abuse of women during the Holocaust. This is another one of her pieces, and this is called Immolation. And you may be familiar with this because it's at the De Young, usually, or is it MoMA? Anyway, it's usually there. So she worked on this project from 71 to 72. So a woman sits here in the middle of the burning flares that emit deep orange smoke. So when you look at this picture, it's beautiful, isn't it? I mean, it's beautiful, but you also have a sense of the danger. And it's a reference to sati, the practice where women are pushed or jump onto the bonfire in India when their husbands die. Also, monks and American peace activists have burned themselves in protest of Vietnam War, and the orange smoke might evoke the Agent Orange. So she struggled with what she described as the macho art scene of the Southern California, and she wanted to soften that scene. And when she looked into the sky and she saw diaphanous light filtered through mist, one day, an idea struck her. And she said, I'm going to do fireworks. So the billowing haze softens the environment, providing a feminine counter to a masculine conception of the world that was, as an earlier generation of feminists saw it, more hard-edged. And they're really very beautiful. Here's another one. This is called Butterfly for Pomona. It's a football field in Pomona. And, land art was very popular in the 70s. And male artists were bulldozing the earth into submission. Judy found a different, more gentle way. She termed these clouds atmospheres. And the Women and Smoke series saw female performers and bodies painted in bold colors and intermingling with the smoke. And they're really beautiful. If you go online, you can see more of it. So this is her piece called Power Play. And she did it in, I think it wouldn't be 1892, that I might have a typo there. So, this work was meant by silence, by mostly the male art world. And she said, I knew that I didn't want to keep perpetuating the use of the female body as the repository of emotions. It seemed as if everything, love, dread, longing, loathing, desire, and terror, was projected onto the female by both male and female artists, albeit with different perspectives. So she was asking these questions, why is this happening? She wondered what feelings the male body might be made to express. Also, she said, I wanted to understand why men acted so violently. I have to say that this project of hers is not one of my favorites, but it still certainly does have a lot of messages in it. So Judy is giving a lecture here in one of her pieces that she did for Power Play. You can see how large often her work is. And it was first exhibited in 1986. And she said it dropped like a stone. So she said, quote, what I found was that the prohibitions around openly expressing feelings, particularly of vulnerability as expressed in tears, caused innumerable personality distortions. So it was not popular. Here is another that she did, a very famous piece from Power Play. So it was about the ugly contortions patriarchy demands of men in order to kill off their more female coded virtues of equality, compassion, understanding, and so on. So there were female artists, were working at the same time. Cindy Sherman was one, Jenny Holzer's another, and they pursued art about the female empowerment. But they refrained from naming men per se as any of the problem. And that's Judy. And she's out of favor. She's in favor, she's out of favor, she's back in again. She does what she believes, whatever she wants to send a message about. This is called The End, Meditation on Death and Extinction. It's very extensive. She built her career on pushing boundaries, and this series, titled The End, is certainly no exception. In nearly 40 works of painted porcelain on glass, as well as 2 really large bronze sculptures, Judy tackles human mortality, and species extinction. When I went to the De Young, and I went to her, this part of the exhibit was there. And, I saw all these, they're not very big, that each one of the pieces are, just less than 2 feet on glass, and they're all kind of the same color. And I thought, gee, this doesn't look that interesting, but I started reading them and I was just compelled by it. So she says, quote, if you work at a slaughterhouse or hunt elephants, what does that do to humanity as a whole? There is violence. There are shreds of Holocaust. These glass plates are less than 2 feet square. I was compelled by them, and the story is told about various species. And they're really very interesting and also very beautifully done. Here's another part of it. So it was done in 2019, and she explores death, and she explores her own death and her own mortality. And she said, quote, I had to make the images compelling so people would look at them. After all, I was asking them to look at how they might die. So the main figure is in stages of dying, is a nude older woman. She was sort of bald, and she looked androgynous. And so Judy said it makes an archetypical every woman a universal figure to whom death will eventually come. This is another one of the pieces. She uses a wide variety of materials, ceramic and glass and bronze. But she develops this very deep sensitive area and looks at the body and the changing and the failing, and the materials chosen as a reflection of life itself, so that you have this glass. And what happens with glass? Well, it reflects light. It's also fragile, isn't it? Glass is fragile, and it's both hard and fragile. And then it has this luminosity. So there were all of these things in the materials that she used to bring this whole thing project to life. Now, this is Judy Chicago in her own death mask. And I have to say that when I saw the exhibit, if this had been the only piece that I had seen in the exhibit, it would have been worth my trip to the city. This image that you're looking at, it just doesn't capture it. But if you ever get a chance to see it, I hope that you will. It is beautiful. It is moving. It was just a beautiful thing. And she did her own death mask as part of the project. Okay. So what is this? Guess what this is? This white thing. It's if you'll look here, you'll see trees behind and buildings. So it's big, right? I mean, it's really big. It's 225 foot long, 45 feet high, inflatable sculpture tent, if you will. And it's installed in the gardens of the Musée Rodin, designed by Judy Chicago for the Christian Dior Spring 2020 Haute Couture show in Paris. Imagine how amazing is that. Here's inside. So it has these curved mauve ceilings and soft lilac carpeting. So did I say the artistic director of this Dior show is a woman? So, and you can see these signs, all these signs that Judy has put up along the walls, and they read things like, would buildings resemble wombs? Would God be female? Would both men and women be gentle? So each one of these flags has some has some saying on it. I think it would have been absolutely thrilling to have been there and to have seen these. Just imagine that you were sitting along the runway, your toes resting on that lilac carpet and your eyes feasting on these sights and the models just flying past. Must have been a glorious presentation. Okay, so this is 2014, and she's working with dry ice. As I told you, Judy works with all these really interesting materials. So this is very atmospheric material, dry ice. It's soft, but it's dangerous. So it has this dual tension in it. Now, this what you're looking at here was 2014, the San Francisco MoMA, and they had this installation. It's 20-ton dry ice installation that spelled out truth in the walkway adjacent to the building when they opened up the new building at the MoMA. And so as a metaphor for an unfortunate current political reality, truth slowly disappears. So as the dry ice evaporates, the word truth disappears. Here's another one that she did, working with dry ice with two other artists. She used 37 tons of donated dry ice to create two different pieces in a shopping mall. The environment was virtually softened as bright pink flares turned the swirling plumes of the disintegrating dry ice into a soft environment through which people walked as the harsh concrete structures disappeared around them. I would have liked to have done that. So at age 82, she is still creating. This is called Toby's Head, and it's made out of glass. She went to a class, a school near Seattle that taught her. It's the Chihuly Institute. If you know the Chihuly glass, of course, they had a fabulous exhibit, I think at MoMA years ago, and everything that Chihuly designed is fabulous. So she went to the Institute, learned about glass. It took her a year and a half to learn the technique. And Toby is a cancer survivor, and she wanted to cast Toby's head, and but she didn't know that Toby had a wig on, and Toby took her wig off, and so Judy cast Toby, and she thought that she looked genderless. What is the core? So it brings out this, again, these ideas that Judy loves to work with. What is the core of being human? Can we reach out our hands to each other and change the world before we destroy it? Is one of her quotes. So what is she doing today besides that? Well, she's still on the move. She was commissioned by the Tate Museum in England to create this spectacular, gigantic mural titled "Four Lads from Liverpool." Well, we know who they are, the Beatles. And so up here in the right-hand corner, I've put a little close-up of the detail that you can see way back there, and it's going to be on the whole side of this building to celebrate the 50-year anniversary of the Beatles album, Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. So there's Judy down here with her huge mural up behind her. So during the pandemic, she did things like this that you're looking at here. It's called Confined. It's her response to life and the feelings of isolation that was caused by the pandemic. This is called Garden Smoke. She makes 12 prints, and they're a series of smoke sculptures created in the backyard in New Mexico and photographed by her husband, Donald Woodman. It's really beautiful, isn't it? So this is a return sort of to her early days in California when she would make all those beautiful smoke atmospheres. Well, to sum it up, from her childhood, she's had a lifelong struggle with identity, and she chronicles that in her biographies, Through the Flowers, My Struggle as a Woman Artist, And so there's many books written on Judy Chicago and many books written on these different projects that we're talking about. And of course, she's done other projects that we didn't have time to talk about. She's very prolific, and she writes in a very straightforward and easy to absorb way. And she has many very valuable messages. So Chicago has remained steadfast in her commitment to the power of art as a vehicle for social change and to women's rights to engage in the highest level of art production. In 2018, as I said before, Time magazine saw her as 100 most influential people. And the same year, the most influential artist. She was called the most influential artist by Artsy magazine. So in Judy's words about her journey, quote, "The problem all along is I don't fit in the art world categories. Today's universities are promoting safe work, so lots of money can be made. You don't want to buy art that makes you think too much." Judy believes that we need systematic change in many areas. She says, quote, "I hope my art can contribute to that conversation." So listening to Judy, I find a woman who is down to earth with little ego, someone who really dares to explore her beliefs. She exposes the underbelly of tough subjects through art, and we might not agree with it all, but I am happy to say, thanks, Judy, for all that you have done for women, for art, and for the planet. So thank you all. I really appreciate your being here, and I'm going to stop sharing now and stop talking and see if you have any questions. Hello.
I do.
Yes, Rebecca.
I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank you, Linda. This was wonderful.
Oh, thank you, Rebecca. I'm so
I
glad you're
agree.
here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Super interesting.
Yes.
Well, it is
didn't know
interesting.
half
I don't think we quite realize how much she did. You know, I mean, it's always the dinner party that you hear about, but she's really done a lot. So, yes, Gail, hi. You're on mute.
I've seen the dinner party a bunch of times and
Uh-oh.
a project, but I didn't know about anything else you talked about. That was great. But I just had one question. You know, the death mask one that you said was so powerful. Was that a on the wall, or was that a horizontal piece that you looked?
Let's see, how was it? Oh my gosh. I think when you walked in, they had it. It was one of the first pieces that you saw when you walked in, and it was actually on the wall as a painting. And it was really beautiful. Yeah, very stunning. So yes, Rebecca.
I didn't realize it was a painting. I thought it was a piece of sculpture.
No, did I say painting? I meant they put it on the wall like you would hang a painting, but it was a piece of sculpture. Right.
Thank you for that clarification.
It was bronze.
Yeah.
Oh, it's just so, was so moving. It was really beautiful.
And was it the whole body or?
I'm sorry.
No, it wasn't. It was just that.
The torso and the head.
Right.
Right.
That was all. Yeah.
Thank you.
And she was smiling in that too. I found that was interesting. On her deathbed, she will be presumably smiling and happy.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, she's a very happy person. You can go online and you can hear her talk. I mean, she's very active. There's a lot of her online, and she's a very happy person. You know, she delves into really tough subjects, but she's not gloomy. She's a very positive, very hopeful person. Yeah.
And I didn't know she had been married all of that time. Is this the group that's like a pretty small group here, like 8 people or something? Or is the group bigger than that?
You mean today?
Yeah.
Well, it was very it was a little confusing today because, you know, we had about 25 people, and then we had to switch it to Zoom because we had a very small handful of people that were had signed up to come in person. I think everything got a little bit crazy. And, but we have
Oh,
people
that
that
was
this recording, this is being recorded. So if you sign up for these lectures and you can't make it, then you get the recording. You're going to get the recording anyway, and then you can watch it.
I was
So,
going to make a total projection that even there weren't even that many people that wanted to learn about her because she's been so, kind of
Yeah.
confrontational. But although that's really interesting that she's such a positive, happy person, she's been married all these years to the
Yeah.
same person. That's pretty amazing,
Yeah.
And so no, I was just wondering, I could see how she's not like as popular as Georgia O'Keeffe
Yeah.
or something like that,
Well, I have given this lecture to SSU, and so there may have been some overlap from that too. But I think you're right, Gail. I think that people don't know who Judy Chicago is, and those who do, there might be a handful who do know about her and don't care for the subject, So yeah. Okay. Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Did you
Great.
have a question, Jim?
Yes.
What? Ask for the question.
What point, where is she now for?
She lives
Maintaining.
she, thank you for that question. She lives in New Mexico with her husband, Donald. She's 83, 84 years old, and she's still doing art. So
Which is great. And I'll pipe up and say thank you, Linda, from San Diego. And thank goodness that we get to see you with video. We wish it was in person. But we're grateful that Sebastopol, we're still connected to Sebastopol somehow.
that's great. That's great. Well,
We went to the original, I was in school when the exhibit was at MoMA, because it was in the armory building there, where they just had a couple of floors that belonged to the Museum of Modern Art. And it was very shocking. I mean, the comments of people when they came out was just, and it was just outrageous. We were just like, wow, it was just so new. And it's so, and you're right, it was so good today to find out more about her other art other than just the dinner party, although we still have the original poster.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. That's great. Well, I guess Catherine DeVries is with us now, and she's the director of Sebastopol Center for the Arts. And I think that, Catherine, you wanted to ask how people felt about these lectures. I have another one in October and another one in November, and we're just thinking of making them Zoom and not try to make them in person. We didn't have a big response to the in-person, and so what do you all think about that?
I like Zoom.
Yeah.
I like.
Well, I think it's. Go ahead.
I like seeing people and being able to mix and mingle with my friends and talk and exchange ideas too. But the convenience of being able to stay at home and not have to get in the car and drive somewhere is really important to me anyway. So I really appreciate this venue and this format, and I really love these lectures, and I will continue to participate in each and every one of them. So Linda, thank you so much for continuing.
Great. Well, we love to have Sebastopol Center for the Arts. We're very lucky to have them. They're in their fundraising campaign right now. So if you've got a notion to sit down and write out $1,000 check and send it in, please do so. But any amount would be very welcome, and we would appreciate it. So any other questions, Rebecca?
Well, I just echo what Beth said about Zoom versus in person.
Right. So you're okay with that?
Yeah, I am. Even though I only live a couple blocks from the art center, I really like this format, being able to tune in and also have the recording as well.
Yeah. I
So,
think you're right. I think the recording is kind of a nice asset that we don't get otherwise. That's for
yeah,
sure.
and I was thinking maybe some people have signed up for it and they're just gonna watch the recording later because the time
Yes.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, that does happen. And it's happening more all the time as people begin to realize that the
Right.
recording is being made and they can watch it on their own time. So,
Right.
I think it will take a time before people really get back into in-person meetings.
yeah,
The most difficult part of this is when we realized, because it was actually our idea to think, okay, let's see how people will sign up. Will there be more people who want to come in person, or will be more people on Zoom? But the problem is, if we want to do a mixed lecture, that is complicated.
Yeah.
Because truly then Linda has to talk into the screen and at the same time to the public. And we actually don't have that technological, the assets for it. So then it's really, then people who are at home don't hear it very well, or so that's what scared me off about-
even when they have the technology, because I've lectured where they have the new technology to be able to do a Zoom and in person at the same time, you still don't get that quality Zoom. So yeah, Rebecca.
And I think as we head into the winter months too, Zoom will be more desirable.
Yeah.
Because we just
Let's-
don't know what the
Let's hope
winter.
you're right, Rebecca. Let's hope
Yeah.
we get a lot of rain.
A lot of rain, and just as far as the pandemic or whatever, because we don't know what the next
Yeah.
season will bring. I think
Yeah.
Zoom is, I think we're fortunate to have this option by the Sebastopol Center for the Arts. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, let me tell you too, that the Sebastopol Center for the Arts now is hosting the show of the artists from Art Trails. So they have one piece from every artist in Art Trails. So you want to catch that show for sure. So
I think they should catch every show. That last show, Pulp, was just incredible, I thought. Yeah.
they are. Every show is wonderful. And thank you, Catherine. We so appreciate everything you do.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
Is there anything more before we say goodbye? Okay, y'all have a wonderful, I'll see you next month.
Well, thank you so much, Linda. Thank you.
Okay, see you next time around. Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.